Good morning, Thailand. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to another week, episode number 26. And good morning, Bill Barnett.
Hi, good morning, Tim. And 3 days to go till the Sandbox. So an exciting week here in Thailand.
And still no official announcement in the Royal Gazette.
Coming soon.
Coming soon. It better come soon. We don't have a lot to sort of add to the Sandbox today. Principally, though, we're sort of moving up to Bangkok because there is a lot happening there. And we'd like to welcome to the program from the Thaiger, our senior writer up there, Caitlin Ashsworth. I'm sorry, I keep on naming you incorrectly. Welcome to the program. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Tim.
Now, let's get stuck into what's happening up there in Bangkok. Can you go through the restrictions that are coming into force from today?
Okay, so for the next month, restaurants are not allowed to offer dine-in services. Then there are no gatherings of more than 20 people. And the third restriction up here that affects us is shopping centers must close by 9 p.m.
Okay, so shopping centres are only being cut back about an hour, but Bill, it's the restaurants that are being hit again.
It's an absolute disaster. It's carnage for restaurants right now. You can't imagine the jobs which are being lost because of the restaurant businesses being open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. This is not a good thing.
It's bad enough that you couldn't get a drink in a restaurant, but now the restaurant's closed back down. Well, I suppose good news for the Grab and Food Panda drivers. But what's the situation? Are people sort of talking much about it up there in Bangkok? Are people throwing their arms up saying, not again?
Yeah, basically that's what they're doing. People are not happy about it. On Twitter, there was a hashtag written in Thai, but it said Bangkok lockdown. And people were sharing so much of their thoughts. And for the most part, people were not happy about it. Even a graphic was being shared of a restaurant worker hung by a noose, just saying that these restrictions are hurting restaurants. I mean, they've already had to go through all the restrictions for the past 3 months. So for another month to not be able to offer dine-in services is really bad. And some people are pushing for people to still order takeaway from restaurants to help them keep going. Yeah.
Bill, restaurants right around Thailand have been hanging on. They've been selling the refrigerator. They've been doing what they can. They've been borrowing money. But this latest restriction, not a lockdown, but it's a new restriction added to the situation in Bangkok, is going to push a lot of businesses over that tether.
And there's a trigger there's a domino effect also because these restaurants are leasing spaces. Their landlords can't pay their financial debts as well. So there's a domino. But really at the root cause, we saw the people in Klong Tui the other day and how many daily workers. These are subsistence workers in the restaurant business. So they're this bottom end of the economic scale. And these are the people who need jobs the most.
Yeah, we should also acknowledge that we've got a lot of people watching. So good morning to Scott D. Hello to Fran, to Roy, to Asian Franchise Academy. The program should be called Good Morning Phuket. That's a bit unfair. I mean, here we are talking about Bangkok, and later on in the program we're talking about Pattaya. So incorrect. Peter, hello to you. Paul, Aaron, Danny, and C. Couldn't come up with anything more, but thank you very much for C. All right, so we've got the shopping centres, we've got the restaurants. What else is happening up there in the way of restrictions, Caitlin?
Now, construction camps where there have been a lot of cases. Most of the cases that have been detected in the recent weeks have been in crowded areas like prisons, factories, and construction camps. So for the next 30 days, construction camps are going to be sealed off. And this is also going to be in Thailand's deep south area too, where there's been outbreaks linked at the construction camps. So this means that people who live on these worker camps and these informal settlements by the camps, they will not be able to leave. The government will be providing them some of their wage during this time and food, but again, people aren't really happy about this either.
I think one thing I was reading, Caitlin, Richard Barrow this morning, and he was talking about Chiang Mai saying if people come from the red zones, they would be required for testing, and people really being encouraged in Bangkok to stay home for a month.
Yeah, people are being encouraged to stay home, but I mean, I know some people who are planning their way out right now, and some people have been avoiding it already. Before these restrictions came in, they've been avoiding it, spending their time working at home from maybe one of the islands. So I don't think many people are going to want to stay.
And Buriram has also announced a 14-day quarantine for anybody coming from, I think, anywhere in Thailand. So, okay, we've got Bangkok and 9 other provinces. Have you got the list of provinces in front of you?
Yes, I have them. So the surrounding provinces are Nonthaburi, Pathum Thani, Samut Sakan, Samut Prakan, and Nakhon Pathom. And then in the deep south, I don't know if I can pronounce them, but they're the 4 provinces in the deep south area by Malaysia: Patani, Yala, Songkhla, and
Naritawat.
Yes.
Naritawat. Well, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
So it's those 4 provinces that border Malaysia. And if you look at a map and add the numbers, Bill, as you go further south from, say, Phetchaburi or Chumpon, it sort of goes yellow, yellow, orange, 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 red, red, red.
Hot zones.
Yeah, hot zones. So the south of Thailand is a bit of a basket case as regards numbers. Now, we should say that the numbers are just indicative of new cases being detected. We are also tracking the number of deaths and hospitalisations, which is the critical part. I should also announce today that before we go to a question, today there was 22 deaths announced, but 5,406 new infections, only 9 of those from prison. So that 5,406 cases are basically community cases. We haven't got a provincial breakdown yet, but that's not a number that we want to see. Of course, all at the same time, just 3 days before Phuket, well, Thailand is getting ready to welcome international visitors back. So we've gone through the provinces, the sealing off of the worker camps. Most of these workers would be migrant workers?
Yeah, most of the workers that I've heard have been migrant workers, and they're typically underpaid, and some of them undocumented, so they're kind of in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
And Thailand has been using this what they call a bubble and seal method to contain the outbreaks at factories and construction camps where migrants work. And this is where they seal off, and in the past, they've still had some of them working at the factories during this time. So being forced to stay in a factory. And there hasn't been too much on the conditions, but there has been a report about some of them that were getting their food was not very good quality. And then there was a power outage, and many of them had to leave.
All right, we're going to have a quick break. Hang in there, Caitlin. Quick break. We're going to get to some of your questions right after this. You are watching The Thaiger and Good Morning Thailand. And you're back on Good Morning Thailand. Thank you for joining us today. Brand new week here in the land of smiles. Should also announce some news today This is, sadly, we're here to report the news, and most of it is not good. But the first case of the beta variant of COVID-19, originally detected in South Africa, has been found in Bangkok. So that's not the sort of thing we want to hear, but at least health officials are on top of that particular situation. In Bangkok, we've got Caitlin Ashsworth in the Thaiger offices, and here in the studio with me, Bill Barnett from C9 Hotel Works.
All right, Tim, and we've got a question in from one of our regular viewers, Advocatus Diaboli. Question, right? All in type there. Who will arrive in the Phuket Sandbox without it published in the Royal Gazette yet?
Well, last week the TAT announced that there were some 1,500 people arriving on the first day. And we do know that there's going to be a certain number of influencers and invited guests because the TAT, their job is to publicise Thailand. Whether there's a certain level of propaganda in that particular number, that's yet to be seen. There are going to be people literally standing out the front of the international airport terminal counting the people who are actually arriving. But I think, as we've said all along, this is a start, and it's going to be 10 people, then 20 people, then 100, then thousands, and eventually the numbers will start returning as long. And this is the big trouble with what's happening up in Bangkok and with these rising case numbers, that there's not another lockdown. My goodness.
I just think to clarify the process for the Royal Gazette, the Royal Gazette should be published today, and the COE process at all the embassies where people are trying to apply to come back to Thailand, that's the trigger. So effectively, there was a notice out last week saying that Monday morning, the embassies should be ready to start accepting COE applications. So that will be the trigger for the process. What's unknown right now in terms of how many people will actually be here on the first is how long will it take to process a COE?
Yeah, because people can't get onto their aeroplanes until they've got that certificate of entry to get back into Thailand, and everybody will need a certificate of entry if they want to join in the Sandbox. Well, have you had, what's the talk around Bangkok about people sort of doing the Sandbox to perhaps then get back to the capital?
I haven't heard anything about people trying to go use the Sandbox to get back to Bangkok.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, good answer, thank you.
Here's a question.
Question without notice, sorry, Bill.
In from Alexander Vincent. Please, Thaiger, can you clarify, do foreign couples coming to the Sandbox from abroad, can they share the same hotel room at night if they are not married? Big question. We've seen a lot of these.
Yeah, there was sort of the problem with the moral police last week coming out saying only people who are legally married will be allowed to stay in a room. The issue I have is, what does stay in the room mean? Does it mean that you can go out and spread your diseases around Phuket during the daytime, but you come back for 1 hour at night? Or do you have to stay in your hotel for 8 hours a night? What does staying in your hotel mean? How many hours? Does somebody sitting there with a stopwatch? Do they re-register you when you come back each night? We don't know. We simply don't know.
Let's wait for that. Caitlin, maybe a question in Bangkok. We've seen the malls being hosting venues for the vaccination process. How is that going in Bangkok right now, despite the crisis?
The vaccines have been really, really slow in Bangkok. I mean, I think that the priority was given to Phuket and Samui because they want to reopen those islands
because we're special.
As possible. Yeah, you're very special. For foreigners especially, it's been really difficult, and the website to register went down and actually exposed some people's personal information, like their passport numbers. Things are not the best up here.
Question from Eddie Robb says, do we need to pay for our hotel in full before entering Phuket? Yes, you'll actually have to show your receipt of a fully booked accommodation.
With an SHA Plus hotel. And
at an SHA Plus hotel.
Just to go back with SHA Plus, this is not, again, there were always concerns about gouging on hotels, et cetera, but I think there are a lot of SHA hotels. There's over 500 now listed, and that will continue to mount. So there will be something for every budget.
Yeah, I think also we need to acknowledge that a lot of these hotels are specially opening from July the 1st to be part of this reopening in Thailand. So they're not really in a massive position to be super competitive like they might have been back in 2019. But I've seen prices below 1,000 baht a night in some really nice hotels. So there is, as Bill said, something for everybody. Yeah. But SHA Plus also applies to transportation, to restaurants. Anybody who runs a business can apply for the SH Plus certification.
Maybe back to Caitlin in Bangkok. Caitlin, are you riding the BTS now? Are you riding Grab? I mean, how are you getting around the city?
I'm riding BTS. It's been basically normal. I've gone on Grab. I've gone on motorbike taxis. I mean, I also just went to the mall yesterday, and it was as if the mall was completely normal. So people don't seem to have that fear that they did at the beginning of the pandemic last year. People are kind of just kind of over it, honestly.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, and we're going to be talking about that soon as well, but I noticed when I was back in Bangkok for a year, up till the start of April, that people were still crowding into the BTS. There was no restrictions on numbers. It started off when we first came out of lockdown in April last year, that there was sort of every second seat was separated. But then you'd have 50 people jammed into the middle of the train. But that's all gone. They don't really seem to be caring as long as you've got a face mask on.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely less people on the BTS now than when you were here before April. Definitely a lot less. But people were still kind of doing the same things they would do. They just can't go to the bars.
Bill.
Which is really sad.
Oh, actually, I've got a question in from one of our regulars. Shaneo Traveler. Question, Bill. Do you share the opinion that Thailand tourism sector will never recover? I mean, we've been through this time and time again. This is the beginning of a new sector. It's the beginning of a new cycle, and we believe that over time, people will travel again. So I think it's baby steps going forward. Right now, it's going to be step by step, but it's going to take a long time. I think nobody's saying tomorrow, as soon as the Sandbox is open, people are going to flock in anywhere. It's a process.
My feeling is really that international travel is going to take a long, long time to recover. And I think the halcyon days of the first 2 decades of this century, we're never really going to see that amount of travel. One of the problems is pandemics aren't going away. There will be another pandemic. This isn't the last. I think we've learnt a lot during this pandemic. We've learnt from SARS and MERS, which happened earlier in the century. But the biggest problem is that the more airlines you have, the cheaper the fares are, the more people are travelling, the easier it is for pandemics to spread. So we've sort of invented the perfect pandemic spreader, which is international travel.
Here's an important question. This goes back to Bangkok or anywhere in Thailand. From Zamzam, have you seen the amount of homelessness in Thailand? It's so bad, will we be safe? I know, Caitlin, up in Bangkok, what's the situation right now with homelessness?
Yeah, I have noticed there are a little bit more homeless people. Then again, I come from Florida, and we had a huge problem, so it doesn't even compare to that. But I have noticed a couple more people have been on the streets, but not a big difference in my area.
I don't think we've got any situation where people are like starving in Thailand. Sure, things are very difficult, but there's a really good network of family support, a very Asian thing. And certainly down here in Phuket, there's been a lot of support from NGOs, foreigners rolling up their sleeves and helping out their neighbours and their peers. Some of them more organised, some of them less organised. So I don't think anybody's really starving as such, although things are very difficult.
I think things are pretty dire. I think One Phuket's done a great job here in terms of feeding people. What you don't see in the soys and what you don't see, behind these situations is there's a vast amount of the economy is shattered right now, and there's the economic toil, especially for the low wage earners. I think that's probably the tragedy of this. I think, Tim, I know we always raise this question about, would you actually travel within Thailand because are you scared of false positives in terms of going through or negatives going through your testing process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually get my first COVID vaccine today, and I'm looking forward to, once I've had that, I'll be able to travel a bit more freely because I'm having the AstraZeneca, and as far as the Thai government's concerned, once I've had the first of the 2 vaccines, I'll be able to move around. But yeah, I am more worried about having something shoved up my nose and having a false positive, a false negative, or a real negative, and being shuffled off to a quarantine where all my rights are basically taken, and even though it's a public health emergency, I'm going to basically be restricted without being able to see friends or family. That worries me, but it's less worrisome to other people, but it's a reason I haven't been doing travel. Before we go just going to have another quick break. Caitlin, hang in there. We've got some other stuff to discuss, including some polls we ran yesterday asking people about their opinions on things. You're on Good Morning Thailand. Thanks for joining us.
Want to keep up to date with what's happening in Thailand? Download the Thaiger app. It works on both Android and Apple. And it's free. All the latest news, videos, and information at one click from your phone. Go to your Play Store or App Store and download now.
This is Good Morning Thailand. Didn't do that very well. Good Morning Thailand on the Thaiger. Thank you for being part of the program. Thank you for all your questions and comments. We'll get to some in a moment. Caitlin, Bill, yesterday there was an article published saying that nearly 74% of Thais don't want Thailand to reopen in 120 days, which of course the Prime Minister announced last week, proudly saying that Thailand will be open by that time. So we decided we'd run our own poll. Our poll, of course, is not asked to Thais, but to foreigners, and not only foreigners in Thailand, but foreigners outside of Thailand who might have an interest in coming back to the country. Some 1,700 people responded, and we asked them the question, should the Phuket Sandbox go ahead on July the 1st? So the most popular answer was absolutely open Phuket on July the 1st. The Sandbox is a vital step. There were 43% people responding. The second most popular response was it would be crazy to reopen tourism to Thailand at this time. The third most popular response was have to open eventually, might as well be now.
No easy call. It's certainly going towards this, and there isn't consensus. It's interesting where these polls are in Bangkok as well, but certainly the situation in Bangkok is driving a lot of the sentiment right now, and it's a real hot spot. I know, Caitlin, how do you feel the mood amongst the Thais you talk to in Bangkok about reopening?
I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the best idea right now. We're in the most severe wave of COVID-19 here in Thailand. It doesn't even compare to the wave back last year. If you look at a chart, it's like this and this. So yeah, people kind of want to get the vaccination campaign underway here before welcoming people who are vaccinated, because a lot of people here aren't vaccinated yet.
Just looking around behind you at the office, I noticed that a lot of the staff from our associated businesses, there's a lot of people still working from home.
A lot of people are working from home. But there's quite a few people here today, and there has been more in weeks before, but I think that because of some of the restrictions, maybe they're not here, but I'm not sure, maybe they're late.
Okay. Okay. Tim, here's a shout out from Bernie. Tim, be careful with AstraZeneca. Canada has canceled it.
Yeah, look, there are other European countries which have postponed the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but there are now millions, many millions, including a lot of people in the UK that have been vaccinated against COVID with the AstraZeneca vaccine. I had a choice of two. I've chosen to go for the AstraZeneca rather than the Sinovac, partly because of my age. But in both cases, there's a lot more people dying from COVID than from complications with vaccines. So I'll take my chances. Thanks.
Actually noted from Bob Cassidy, are these polls on the Thaiger phone app?
Sorry?
Are these polls on the Thaiger app?
The polls I ran were on YouTube. So you probably need to go to our YouTube channel, click on Community, and the polls are published there. So it'd be a bit of a sideways trek from the phone app. So just go straight to our YouTube channel. Type in YouTube, The Thaiger, you'll find it. And subscribe to the channel while you're there. Bill.
I think, Tim, it's going to be an interesting week with the Thaiger as well. You're going to be visiting Patty again?
Oh yes, we've got Buzzin Patia Buzzin.
Okay. Oh.
Anyway, Trevor will be on the program tomorrow. We're then travelling to Chiang Mai on Wednesday. We've been recently to Hua Hin, and of course we're with Caitlin today in Bangkok. So we're trying to get a bit of the mood of the meeting from right around the country. Then later this week we're going to be doing the show. Why am I doing this? Where you will be able to come and visit us and will throw things at us. We're going to be broadcasting from a cafe in Phuket from July the 1st as we, sort of hope to see a few new faces walking around the area. So you can come in and join a coffee. I think there's going to be a special Thaiger breakfast.
Okay.
So we'll tell you more about that in coming days.
And just a note in from Ree J. Is Caitlin single? She's a beautiful redhead. I want to take her for pad Thai. Caitlin, you've got an audience already.
So, yeah, cool.
No comment.
Put those two in contact. We don't want to know anything about it. Do you all keep up with the science regarding people that have been vaccinated? As the science comes out, those that have been vaccinated are very safe themselves and safe to others. Well, that's true. Of course, the reason I'm being vaccinated is so I personally will be able to avoid any of the worst ravages of the disease should I get COVID-19. And we're sort of in the early days of vaccination here in Thailand. We're in a different part of the cycle than, say, places like the US. What is one thing that this is sort of has been of interest to me, that a lot of countries that have got high vaccination are now starting to get a rise in cases, but they've got a lowering trend when it comes to deaths and hospitalisation. So I think once these countries start to roll out the vaccination, people's their mindset is that, everything's okay now, and they go about their life the way they used to. But yes, a lot of these countries like Chile, the Seychelles, Maldives, here in Thailand, we start to get the vaccination rollout and we see an increase in cases, but importantly, a lowering trend of hospitalisations and deaths. That's the crucial part.
But a few comments about the mysterious tar balls on the beaches of Phuket, Tim. What's the situation now?
Well, I think they're still rolling up on the beach. I didn't check over the weekend, but last Friday there were still some tar balls rolling in on some of the northern beaches on the west coast of Phuket. But there are people who are going down. There's a lot of work and a lot of people, a lot of effort to clear those tar balls up. So it's not going to be a problem when you come to the island.
Okay. I think there's a lot of questions about mental health right now. We're seeing suicides pick up. We're seeing other things. Caitlin, what's the impact? I know you've been locked up for quite a while in isolation, over the past year or so. How are you feeling?
Well, I've tried to avoid it as much as possible. So whenever there has been tight restrictions, I've usually gone away. I really like to go to the bar. I like to go to the clubs, and to not be able to do that, and now to not be able to go to a restaurant. I mean, it's really, really stressful.
So have you considered moving out of the city and moving back out to the
country,
the beaches? And I know the answer, but tell us your thoughts.
Yeah. Yes, I'm getting out of here for sure. Just because, I spent just a month ago, I spent 2 months in the south, and it was just so much better to be on the islands. The restrictions were less. It just, in Bangkok, it is really, really hard to live like this. And especially when you don't have family around, you're in a condo, and it's just, it's not good.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be the real thing about post-COVID lifestyles, people wanting to get away, people learning to work from home now, making their Zoom calls and everything else. I think it's made people reevaluate their lifestyles.
All right, maybe a couple more comments or questions, and then we might wrap things up for today.
Okay, Tim, we've had also a lot of questions about restrictions in province. From Don, how can we check travel restrictions for each province? Is there a website or Twitter feed?
Because Thailand's made up of Bangkok and another 76 provinces, it is a little bit difficult to keep track of exactly what's happening in each province, because it's not a sort of a centralised system here where, even though there is a Thai government, the provincial governors do have quite a lot of opportunity to change the rules. I think in this case to make them either at the same level or stricter. So Buriram is a case in point where they've basically got a quarantine now. So we don't have an answer for that. And if we started publishing what's happening in each province, by the time it sort of hit the press, it would be out of date. So we do try and keep you up to date with all the major changes, the major news, but it's very difficult to actually provide a definitive list.
Just on the mental health note, we had a note in from Robert Rohr. Thailand has the highest suicide rate per capita in the world, and since COVID, it's almost doubled.
I don't believe that's correct. So thanks for the comments, but I don't believe that is correct.
I think one of the issues we keep talking about is people saying who's going to be the first guest coming back to Thailand. Tim, from Australia, I think 3% of Australia has had their first vaccinations now.
Yeah, well, Australia's an interesting case. Australians have been very prominent tourists here in the land of smiles for 3 decades. It's like about 500,000 people every year, just flatlined throughout the last 3 decades. And whilst there's been other countries now coming to Thailand, Australians have certainly been enthusiastic and very consistent. But currently, Sydney's in a lockdown situation. Australians are not being able to travel. Same with New Zealand. So there's a whole market there that's been cut off from Thailand for a while. There are repatriation flights still back to Sydney from Bangkok every week, and some 40 people have been taking up the option to fly back to Australia. But the traffic coming the other way doesn't exist for now.
Yeah. I think that's the thing people have to understand with the who's going to be coming to Thailand. It's a two-way street, and what restrictions apply for them when they go back. We know the UK is still on amber status, and it's really going to be a matter of what restrictions you're going to have. If you come to Thailand for the Sandbox, what are you going to face when you go back?
Yeah, and I think the quarantine in other countries, people are asking us, will I have to quarantine when I go back to my country? Sometimes they ask us that question and not even tell us where they're from. Those situations will change as well as countries change their entry conditions. So the whole thing is sort of a moving jigsaw puzzle, and we're doing our best to try and keep you up to date. All the way from Bangkok, Caitlin Ashsworth, thank you very much for joining us on the Thaiger today.
Thank you.
And if we get any additional date opportunities, we'll pass them on. Bill Barnett, who didn't get any date opportunities today, thanks for joining us.
Well, I'll be looking forward to hearing Jay tomorrow. Jay is going to be back on strong, and he's going to be right sitting in the seat. And great job last week, Jay.
And we've got Abel, who's here on Wednesday. Yeah, sort of moving the chair around, a revolving chair. And
where's the plant?
I was going to say we've got one. Oh, what happened to the plant? Oh,
it's like that. Okay.
Well, that plant has been usurped.
Do you have a plant, Caitlin?
We've got 2 other plants. Do you? Yes.
No.
Yeah. So that's what's wrong. You need a plant, Caitlin. To Jay and Jason, thank you very much for pressing the buttons. To you for joining us, thank you very much. And who was that walking past you in the background? I'll find out what's happening in the Bangkok office. Thanks very much for joining us on Good Morning Thailand, and we will be back again talking a lot about Pattaya tomorrow on the program.
Have a good week, Thailand.